Lysis by Miss Nihilist. Chapter 2, Phase 1, Attachment. To start, viral proteins on the capsid or phospholipid envelope interact with specific receptors on the host cellular surface. This specificity determines the host range of a virus. The shrill beep of his alarm woke Ben up far before he was ready for it. He groaned and rolled over, glaring at the flashing red 7 o'clock. He reached out and smacked the top of it a few times until he hit the off button. Ben debated going back to bed, but if he did, Rook would just come in to get him for patrol. He had before. With that in mind, Ben pushed himself to his feet. In 5 minutes, he was showered and dressed. He stepped out of the bathroom and into the kitchen as he wrestled with his hair, trying to yank his brush through a spot that was tangled from sleep. "Ben," Carl said chastisingly, "take your time with your hair. Do you want to go bald before you hit 40? "That's not gonna happen. You've still got your hair and you're, 50? Ben joked as he took a seat across from his dad. Carl shot him a playful glare over the newspaper he was engrossed in. 1, you know I'm not 50. 2, you don't get locks like these by yanking on them with your brush. He ran a hand through his full head of hair overdramatically. Sandra stepped out of the kitchen holding a plate of buttered toast with a fistful of fruit on the side. She always made a light breakfast because Ben rarely ate in the mornings. The plate was set down in front of Ben and Sandra plucked his comb from his hand, switching it out for a fork. "Your father's right, you know," she said. "Don't rip tangles out, Ben. You're 17. You should know how to brush your hair by now." Despite that, Sandra used her fingers to separate Ben's tangled cowlicks and began to brush them out patiently. "What did you brush for?" Ben protested through a mouthful of bread and strawberries. He swallowed and said, "I'm just in a hurry. Patrol, remember?" "I don't know why they make you go on those things," Carl commented with a shake of his head. "If someone sneezes the wrong way in this city, they call you to handle it anyway." "Carl," Sandra gave him a pointed look. When Ben opened his mouth to try rehashing the same old argument they'd been through a dozen times before, she smacked the top of his head lightly with the brush. "You too, Ben. No arguing at the table." "I wasn't going to argue," Ben said huffily, but he closed his mouth and sank down in his seat anyway, silently polishing off the rest of his breakfast. Just as Ben was finishing up, the proto-truck's horn honked outside of the house. Ben was quickly on his feet. He deposited his empty plate in the sink, kissed his mom on the cheek, and gave his dad a brief hug. "Bye, guys." Ben paused at the door to wave at his parents. Carl grinned. "Be smart out there, Ben." "We love you, sweetie," Sandra called back to him. Ben shut the front door behind him and jogged down the driveway to the curb where the truck was waiting for him. He hopped into the passenger seat and had barely buckled in when Rook was pressing on the gas. "Morning, Rook," Ben greeted. Rook didn't so much as glance at him. His lips were pressed into a thin, displeased line. "Ben," he said shortly. There was a pause while Ben waited for Rook to continue. When he didn't, Ben frowned. You all right? You seem—" "I do not want to talk about it," Rook cut him off. He kept his glare focused on the road ahead of him. Despite his tight grip on the wheel, Rook was driving normally. If it weren't for his tone, Ben would have no idea that he was upset at all. Ben blinked. "Okay, but if you change your mind, I'm here to listen," he said awkwardly. Rook just huffed. That seemed to be the only answer that Ben was going to get out of him. Ben thought about saying more, but he was clearly bothering Rook, so he decided against it. Whatever Rook was pissed about, it would pass. For the time being, Ben just settled in to watch the city blur by. If Rook was going to keep this up the whole day, then Ben was in for a long, boring day of patrol. Apparently, Rook did intend to keep up his bad attitude for the rest of patrol. By the time afternoon rolled around, Rook had said maybe 10 more words to Ben in total, all of them with a tone of derision, had rolled his eyes 7 times and scoffed twice. It was getting old very fast. Ben was doing his best not to take it personally or let it get to him. Everyone had bad days, and Rook probably had a really good reason to be so upset, but he was also clearly taking it out on Ben, and it wasn't appreciated at all. Rook's silent treatment was broken up by an attack from Trombibulor. By then, Ben was almost relieved to be attacked. Hopefully the physical exertion would help Rook blow off some steam, and Ben also found himself needing the break from the tense atmosphere of the truck's cabin. As forearms, Ben grappled with Trombibulor, doing his best to keep the alien's rampage confined to one street. He waited for an opening to dart to the side and used his speed advantage to get behind Trombibulor. Forearms pulled him into a full Nelson hold, pinning Trombibulor wide open for Rook to take a shot at him. Rook fired, but his aim was a little high, and Trombibulor managed to slip free at the last second, leaving Forearms' face to absorb the blast. Ben's vision went white, then red, as pinpricks of pain danced over the skin around his eyes. He was blasted right off of his feet and into the building behind him. Forearms slammed through the window and crashed into the ground, cracking the tile with the force of his landing. The Omnitrix beeped, giving him a split-second warning before depositing Ben back into his human form. "Good thing that Tetramans have tough skin," Ben mumbled. The skin around his eyes felt irritated, not unlike a bad sunburn, but other than that, he felt all right. He pushed himself into a sitting position, blinking away the lingering fuzziness in his eyes. A hand was offered to him, and Ben took it. "Want to tell me what the hell that was about, Rook?" Ben snapped in frustration. Being in a bad mood was one thing, but compromising each other's safety was another. The glare was wiped off Ben's face when he realized that he was definitely not looking at Rook. Admittedly, the fact that the hand he was gripping was bare and not covered by armor should have been his first clue. "Elena!" Ben gaped at her. He should have immediately hit the Omnitrix so that he was ready if she tried to attack him, but Ben was a little preoccupied being stunned that she was even here in the first place. The last time he had seen her had felt rather final in the moment. "Hi, Ben. That was quite the hit you took," Elena said lightly, like she was chatting about the weather. She gave a heave to pull Ben to his feet, and he was too taken aback to think about resisting until he was already standing. "What are you—" Ben shook his head as he gathered himself. He reclaimed his hand and took a cautious step back. "Why are you here?" he asked, not so subtly reaching for the Omnitrix. A flicker of hurt crossed Elena's face, but it was soon wiped away. She couldn't exactly blame him for being wary. She was lucky that Ben hadn't skipped the questions entirely and come out swinging. "I'm not going to attack you, or anyone else," Elena assured him. Her gaze darted down to his feet. "Oh, hold on, let me clean up this broken glass," she said, and then microchips swarmed out of her shoes to engulf the ground around them. Ben jumped back, but he needn't have bothered. Her microchips didn't touch Ben. They clumped up around the pieces from the broken window, and, when they retreated back into Elena, the ground was left spotless. For a moment, Ben said nothing. He held himself still and tense, eyeing the ground as if looking for a trap or expecting a trick. When nothing happened, he looked back to Elena. "Thanks," he said, his gaze no less suspicious than it was before. His hand didn't leave the Omnitrix. "But that doesn't answer my question." "I know." Elena tried for a smile. "Look, Ben, since the last time we saw each other, I've—" She was interrupted when a blast from the prototool sounded right outside of the broken window. Trombipulor was flung into the air, but he managed to catch himself on the asphalt and skid to a stop. "Ben!" Rook's voice, clearly angry, called. "That blast could not have knocked you unconscious. Get back out here and help me with this lowlife." Torn, Ben glanced between Elena and the fight outside. He hesitated. "I should probably—" "Do you need any help?" Elena offered. She let her palms swarm with microchips to illustrate her point. Ben grinned to hide the unnerved shudder that ran down his spine. No, don't worry about it. Rook and I have this covered. Why don't you find me once we're done and you and I can talk?" He spoke with a healthy amount of skepticism. After everything Elena had done, Ben knew that he ought to just restrain her, turn her into the plumbers, and call it a job well done. But Elena wasn't attacking him at the moment, and overall, she seemed a lot more reasonable than the mess she had been during their last conversation. When she smiled, Ben's chest ached. Even now, she still looked so much like his old friend. "I'd like that," Elena said. She waved Ben off. "Go save the day, hero." Ben spared a glance at Elena over his shoulder as he started off. But a noise of pain from Rook convinced Ben to hurry up, and he put his turbulent thoughts about Elena to the back of his mind to deal with later. As he stepped out of the broken store, Ben hit the Omnitrix and rejoined the fight. Trombipulor took a little longer to handle than usual, thanks to Ben and Rook both being distracted, but they eventually managed to restrain him without much difficulty. Ben wasn't paying much attention to that. He was worried about the possibility that Elena had disappeared already. As Rook crammed Trombipulor into the back of the truck, Ben glanced around at the faces of gawking onlookers and local news reporters that had arrived to film the aftermath. He didn't see Elena among them, but that didn't mean she wasn't still around somewhere. "Hey, Rook." Ben waved to get his partner's attention. "While we were fighting, I ended up running into Elena. He paused. "You know who she is, right?" "Yes." Rook didn't look happy about it. "Is that why you left me to handle the situation on my own?" Ben winced. I was just distracted for a second. Sorry, man." His apology didn't seem to appease Rook in the slightest. The scowl on Rook's face only deepened. "If you wish to talk to women, you should do it on your own time." "What?" Ben's face turned pink in embarrassment. "That's not at all what I was doing. What's with you today? You're being a jerk." Rook snorted derisively. Please, by all means, take your time with your friend. When you are done fraternizing, I will be in the truck. He left it at that, turning around and stalking off before Ben could get another word in. Fine, whatever, Ben snapped back. A part of him wanted to go after Rook, but Ben didn't really want to be around him at the moment. Regardless of the reason for Rook's sour mood, Ben was starting to take it personally. He stalked back towards the store that he had been thrown into, forcing himself to calm down with each step. Ben was feeling marginally more like himself as he came to a stop by the broken window. He looked around, but still didn't see Elena anywhere. It was while Ben was debating where to search next that he felt a tap on his shoulder. He startled, whirling around to face none other than Elena. Sorry, she said immediately. I didn't mean to scare you. Ben made a skeptical noise. Is that the only thing you're sorry for? Of course it's not. Elena looked away, ashamed, but Ben wasn't about to trust her just because she seemed sad. Listen, Ben, I know it sounds like a trick, but I've changed a lot since we last saw each other, she said. Elena. Ben sagged, saddened and exhausted. That sounds awesome if it's true, but you know I have no reason to believe you. I know. She bit her lip. I've been holding down a job, though. It's just a cashier position, but I was working down the street when I saw your fight and came to check on you. Elena trailed off before finding her courage. Ben, if it's at all possible for you to forgive me, I know it's not fair of me to ask, but can you please try? I've missed you. When he hesitated, Elena added softly, I've missed my best friend. A part of Ben wanted to be angry with her, because it wasn't fair that she was asking this of him. Ben wanted so badly to forgive Elena, to believe that she was better now, that everything could go back to normal between them. But he wasn't stupid, and when things seemed too good to be true, they usually were. Ben looked away. I've missed you too, he admitted. But you know I can't promise you anything, Elena. Your words just aren't enough. I understand. Elena seemed disheartened, but, to her credit, was already taking Ben's rejection much better than she had before. Can we at least keep in contact? Nothing weird or alien, just my phone number. She pulled a normal cell phone out of her back pocket, a hesitant smile dancing on her lips. The tense set of Ben's shoulders relaxed some. Sure, he agreed. We can text. He paused. Ben probably shouldn't say anything more, but he couldn't help adding, for what it's worth, I really do want to trust you. Elena gazed at him softly. I look forward to earning that trust. His conversation with Elena was the last nice thing that happened during patrol. Rook stayed angry the rest of the day, ignoring Ben's attempts to talk to him entirely. Ben was content to let Rook have his attitude and his silence, but it came to a head when they went to the plumber base to process the paperwork for Trombipulor's arrest. Grandpa Max had the street camera footage from their fight pulled up on the monitor. Good job with him, you two, he said once they were done watching. He turned to Ben and the stiffness of his posture relaxed some. Looks like you took that hit from the proto-tool pretty hard, kiddo. Do you need to stop by the infirmary before we send you home for the day? No, I'm fine. Forearms took the worst of it, Ben said. Rook huffed. Yes, Ben is fine. He was out of the fight for so long because he was too busy flirting to assist. That is not what I was doing, Ben seethed. His confusion and frustration finally boiled over, and there was real, genuine anger in the glare that he turned onto Rook. What is with you today, man? You've been a total dick since you picked me up. Unlike you, I prioritize doing my job, Rook snapped back. If you thought that being kind and coddling you was going to last forever, then I am sorry to disappoint you, but my patience for your subpar performances in the field has run thin. Ben sputtered, his face burning red with embarrassment and anger. Subpar? You were the one that missed your shot. I am not just talking about today's fight. It has been every fight. Every fight? Dude, I saved your whole planet twice. And fueled your ego while you did it, Brooke snipped. Before Ben could get another retort in, he was stopped by Grandpa Max's hand on his shoulder. Why don't you both calm down, he suggested gently, but even he was visibly shocked by Rook's behavior. Go ahead and file your report on today's fight, Rook. I'll talk to Ben. I might as well file his, too. He always leaves the busy work for me, Rook muttered under his breath. He shot one last dirty look at Ben before turning and leaving. Ben opened his mouth to call out an insult after him, but he bit his tongue when Grandpa gave his shoulder a squeeze. As soon as Rook had left the room, Ben's anger deflated like a sad balloon. Frustrated tears pricked his eyes, and Ben blinked them away. I don't get it, Grandpa. He's been like this all day. Is there something at work that's bothering him? Or maybe some bad news from home? Ben trailed off. He looked up at Max, lost. Nothing that I've heard of, Grandpa said. When Ben looked disheartened, Max continued. But we'll get to the bottom of it. Even if Rook wasn't your best friend, he's being extremely unprofessional. Don't worry, Ben. Max ruffled his hair fondly. Maybe it is just a bad day, and Rook will feel guilty tomorrow. If you still like this in the morning, I'll help you figure out what the problem is. Ben relaxed a little bit. Thanks, Grandpa. Somehow, he didn't think that this was something that would just be gone in the morning. Nothing in Ben's life was ever that easy. He did feel a little bit better with Grandpa's reassurance, though. Whatever was up with Rook, Ben was glad that he wouldn't have to work through it alone.